Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's webinar on the topic How to Design and Produce Food and Beverage Packaging for the Circular Economy. I'll be a moderator for this exciting session this afternoon. My name is Ben Daniel. I'm the Chief Editor of Packaging Middle East and Africa magazine. Packaging Middle East and Africa is the premier publication for the Middle East and Africa regional packaging industry. We deliver in-depth insights into the complete packaging value chain, covering design, structures, materials, converting, printing, manufacturing, and machinery and end-of-line and recycling as well. Innovation, sustainability, digitalization, and automation are the four pillars guiding our work and shaping our approach across the packaging value chain. Well, packaging sustainability today has become an urgent requirement, with top brands nearing their commitment deadlines. The food and beverage packaging industry is increasing, and it's being called upon to lead the way in sustainable innovation. In today's webinar, we'll be exploring how adopting circular packaging processes can help producers not only meet regulatory requirements, but also enhance brand reputation, reduce costs, and boost product differentiation. So, our speaker for today is Philip Parubets, who is the Business Development Manager at Husky Technologies. With over 17 years of experience in the industry and a strong technical background, Philip has worked across several global markets from Canada to the United Arab Emirates, making him exceptionally qualified to share valuable insights on sustainable packaging for a circular economy. Before we dive into the presentation this evening, just a couple of housekeeping points for us to follow. If you have any questions during this webinar, please feel free to type them into the Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom screen dashboard. We'll address them after the presentation in a dedicated Q&A session at the end of this. If you encounter any technical difficulties, please feel free to send us a chat message and our team will assist you as quickly as possible. Thank you for joining us for this wonderful webinar this evening. Without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce Philip Parubets. Over to you, Philip.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for the kind introduction. It's always good to be back with Packaging MEA. I believe we've been with you guys for a number of years, so it's always good to be back again with you. This is, in fact, I think around the 6th or 7th webinar for Husky on the topic of the circular economy. And in all of these cases, we have witnessed a lot of interest from attendees coming to join us to listen to us and learn about sustainability, which is a reflection of the enormous importance of sustainable packaging in today. So the purpose of this webinar is to share with you an overview of many aspects of sustainable packaging and the considerations you can include in your design, and which I can hope will help you in achieving your sustainability goals. We have a lot to cover, so let us dive in. So in today's agenda, we're going to discuss 3 parts. In the first part, we'll talk about the circular economy and sustainability in general, kind of the big picture, high-level view. In the second part, we'll talk about how to design circular food and beverage packaging. And finally, we'll talk about the production process, which is also an integral part of developing sustainable packaging, how to bring your concept into reality. So let us first answer the following question. What is the circular economy? And here, allow me to paraphrase this quotation, which I believe clearly summarizes what the circular economy really is all about. And it is recognizing the value of the materials that we're using and ensuring they're kept in the economy and out of the environment. The next question could become is, how does the circular economy relate to packaging? And here, I would argue that it relates to packaging in 2 fundamental ways. Number 1 is setting up processes to ensure that the packaging is properly collected out in the market and properly recycled, so to speak, the recycling rate. And the second aspect of the circular economy as it relates to packaging is ensuring that you design packaging such that it is easy to recycle, and in other words, the recyclability of the packaging, so to speak, and also the recycling content, how much of the new packaging is created using existing post-consumer packaging. So here we're talking about the recycling rate, how much of the packaging is returned back to the recycler. Number two is designing the packaging so it is recyclable. And number three is ensuring new packaging is produced using post-consumer recycled packaging. In fact, when we talk about recycling in the circular economy, it is in fact a critical enabler of a larger sustainability story for packaging, which includes, number one here, reducing greenhouse gases, i.e. reducing the carbon footprint of your packaging. It also includes reducing consumption. And here I'm talking about reducing raw material consumption, so lightweighting your packaging. It also means reducing the water used to produce your packaging. It also means reducing the energy required to produce your packaging. And finally, we're talking about proper collection. And here I'm talking about making sure that the packaging is properly collected in the market and that it's not presented as litter, whether it's on land or whether it is in the oceans, and making sure it is brought back and recycled. And now let us turn our attention as to where we are today with regard to the circular economy for packaging. And I think most of you would agree that it's becoming pretty clear that one of the leading obstacles in developing the circular economy for packaging is the availability and quality of affordable recycled PET. And at the same time, it is also becoming clear that legislation is becoming the key enabler to unblock this situation. If you have legislation in a particular jurisdiction, it influences consumer behavior. It often drives up collection rates. And then after that, it encourages investments. So this legislation can come in the form of extended producer responsibilities or container deposit schemes. And what we're finding is that these laws are often focusing on those two main points: increasing the recycling rate of packaging, making sure they come back to the recycler, and number two, increasing recycling content. So for example, having packaging with 30% recycled PET by the year 2030, for example, and so on and so forth. And it's clear that those regions that have legislation mandating the circular economy, we're seeing that more recycling is taking place, that we're seeing more recycled content included in the packages. So for example, here, if you take a look at this map, if you took a look at Western Europe, North America, and South America, where there's already a lot of legislation promoting recycling and recycling rates, we're finding that more packaging is being recycled. We're finding that more package is including recycled content within. A recent example is, for example, in India, where the FSSAI recently legalized food contact recycled PET. And since that time, we've seen a proliferation of investment in recycling of food grade PET. India beforehand was recycling already 90% of PET, but not for food grade applications. And since that time in 2022, when it was legalized, we've seen a lot of investment in food grade recycling of PET, and also brand owners start launching brands into the market with recycled PET. So we're finding that legislation really starts driving the train in terms of the circular economy. So I do expect to see more countries adopting legislation in the future. When we take a look at the Middle East and Africa in particular, we're seeing, for example, the leaders in Africa are South Africa and Kenya, which already have EPR legislation in place. They're more advanced than the other countries in Africa. And there are other countries, for example, like Tunisia, we're seeing in Ethiopia, we're seeing Tanzania, Uganda, Namibia, Ghana, Nigeria, Cameroon. These countries are in the process of setting up EPR legislation or thinking about it. So they're moving along as well. If you take a look at the Middle East, it's clear that Turkey is leading the way in terms of recycling, in terms of from a legislative point of view, and also from a capacity point of view in terms of recycling. Turkey leads the way. But there's also movements in the UAE, where I'm currently residing, and Saudi Arabia, and also in Jordan. And of course, Egypt, with a lot of recycling capacity there too. We're seeing movements towards circular economy. In South Asia, of course, it's India leading the way after their legalization of using rPET for food contact. Here, let me take a closer look at one of the regions, which is the European Union. They have legislated a couple of years ago the single-use plastic legislation, which is now ratified in the European Union as of last July. And here they're mandating, for example, 25% rPET by the year 2025, 30% rPET by the year 2030. Excuse me. And by this year, as of July 2024, also all single-use plastic containers for beverages need to come equipped with a tethered closure, i.e. a closure that remains attached to the bottle even after opening. So this is already legislated and required to be in place even 2 months ago. And here, just recently, I just found this article here that despite these regulations, 25% by the year 2025 is a couple months away, and they're already realizing that a lot of the countries are actually falling behind the target. So it's clear to me that the European Commission is being very serious about it, and that they plan to enforce these rules that they put in place, and that they're going to go after those countries which are not following these rules. So they're being serious about it, and the industry needs to make sure that they're keeping up to pace. At the same time, while legislation is being introduced all around the world, including Europe and other places as well, the industry is not standing still. It is moving forward with its own bold sustainability goals. And here's just an example on this slide of a number of brands which are setting very bold commitments in terms of the recycled content in the packaging, so the amount of rPET that is required on average across their PET SKU portfolio. So, for example, we have numbers ranging from 25% by the year 2025, maybe 100% by the year 2030, et cetera, et cetera. And these companies are also setting other sustainability goals, which I think are worth mentioning here. Number one, they're talking about recycling rate. In some cases where they are making commitments about the number of bottles that are coming back to the recycle. They're also making commitments about reducing raw material consumption. So here I'm talking about lightweighting. They're also making commitments about reducing greenhouse gases, which packaging is a portion of that, plays a portion of that story. And finally, we're talking about reducing water consumption. Here again, the production of packaging plays a part in that story as well. And we're seeing these commitments being made from all the stakeholders in the consumer packaged good value stream, starting from the resin producers to plastic converters, the solution equipment providers, and finally to the bottlers and the brand owner themselves. In the previous couple of slides, we talked about how legislation and the industry is driving and pushing forward the circular economy. Here we're talking about the why, so to speak. Now let us turn our attention to the how. And here we're going to talk about what are the strategies and best practices that you can deploy in designing sustainable packaging that will, number one, meet legislative requirements in your region, if that is applicable. Number two, achieve your sustainability goals. And finally, number three, future-proof your business. And when we talk about packaging designed for circularity, we're fundamentally talking about 2 points here. 3 points, sorry. Number one, choosing the right material. Number two, designing for minimum waste and maximum recyclability. And number three, finally choosing the right production process to transform your packaging concept, into an industrialized real-world package. And let us begin by talking about the first one, how to choose the right packaging material for your package. But before I talk about the packaging material, allow me to say a couple words about packaging materials in general. I believe this is important to say. Let me ask you to reflect on the last 50 years, the progress we have made in the past 50 years. How much progress we have made in reducing extreme poverty, in reducing famine, infant mortality, and diseases around the world. And let me ask you, do you believe any of this could have been possible without plastic packaging? Plastic packaging that provides safe and affordable delivery of food, water, medicine, and hygiene products to all 8 billion people on Earth in all 195 countries today. The answer is clear. Plastic packaging is essential to human flourishing. It's also been clear in the last 50 years that human flourishing also means protecting our environment. And here I'm talking about addressing greenhouse gases, and creating a circular economy built around the recycling of materials. And on this point, we still have a lot of work to do. A big part of this solution will come from PET packaging, especially recycled PET packaging. And I'll talk about this next. If you take a step back and look at the big picture, you take a look at the total life cycle of the different type of packaging materials, PET stands above the rest. And shown on this slide are just a couple of examples or example reports showing that PET emits fewer greenhouse gases, it requires less energy to produce, it produces less solid waste, and it requires less water in its production. If we take a closer look at the carbon footprint and water consumption of PET compared to the other materials, it's clear to see that PET has a lower melting temperature, which translates to a lower processing temperature to produce, which finally corresponds to a lower carbon footprint. And it's very clear when you compare PET with the other materials. What about the amount of water required for the production of this packaging? It's also clear that PET stands above the rest, with the lowest water consumption compared to the other materials. In fact, there is no other packaging material as efficient and sustainable as PET. If we take a closer look at the recyclability of PET compared to the others, here too, PET packaging is among the leading materials for recyclability. Allow me to finish on this point, which I think is an important point, which is a topic of understanding the importance of trade-offs. For example, if I were to ask you, imagine if all 8 billion people on Earth today had their food, water, medicine delivered only using aluminum or carton or glass packaging. What would that mean? In the case of aluminum, it means that we're going to be producing an additional 140 million tons of red mud fields produced on an annual basis. In terms of carton, it means that we will be producing a 13 times increase in the rate of deforestation. In terms of glass, it means a 7 times increase in amount of greenhouse gases emissions contributed by packaging. Anyone serious about sustainability needs to seriously consider PET as a packaging material of choice. And now that we have identified PET as the most sustainable packaging material of choice, let us turn our attention to the package design. And in this section, we'll talk about 5 design features that could help minimize waste and improve cyclability for PET packaging. We'll start with talking about labelless bottles. We'll then turn our attention to recycled PET bottles, then lightweighting, and we'll talk about tethered closures, and finally, the new exciting PET closures that Husky is launching. And let's begin with labelless bottles. And as the name suggests, it means a bottle without a label. The question becomes, if you don't have a label, where do we put all that important information about the bottle, like the brand logo, the barcode, and the product information, etc., etc. And on the example on the left, all of this information is directly engraved onto the bottle using a laser. And on the example on the right, some of this information is embossed directly onto the bottle during the bottle blow molding process. And they've also included a clever carton clip, recyclable carton clip, that is detachable from the bottle, where they put the rest of the information, the product information, the brand information, etc., etc. The benefits of a labelless package is quite clear. Number one, it reduces waste. There's less chance of litter in the environment if you have no label. And number two, a very important benefit here, it really simplifies the recycling process and it reduces the risk of contamination. All the glue and all the inks associated with labels serve as a contaminant in the recycling process. In fact, even in Korea, as the article on the left shows, they're looking to mandate a labelless-free packaging for bottled water in the next 2 years. And this leads us to our next topic, which is arguably the most important and at the center of the circular economy, which is the topic of recycled PET. And recycled PET is unique, such that it can be recycled up to 100% for food-grade applications, and it can be recycled continuously. And there's already today around the world a huge capacity of recycled PET. Not enough to serve the demand around the world, but today there's already a huge capacity and it's growing. And this capacity is able to recycle PET up to food grade level. And all of these points mean that recycled PET packaging is the most logical material choice to build a circular economy. Given the importance of recycled PET, I would like to spend a little bit of time understanding recycled PET, the processes, where it comes from, and talk about some of the definitions and facts of recycled PET. So first, we talk about the feedstock, the source of material. And here, they can come either in formalized collection schemes where the PET bottles are collected as bales, or it could be informal sectors where people collect the PET bottles as bags. And in both cases, this raw material feedstock is sent to the recycler. And here, the first piece of equipment is a sorting and washing step. This is usually an independent piece of equipment. And this equipment does the coarse separation. We're using a trommel, you're using vision inspection, maybe magnetic currents to separate the coarse contaminants from the PET. Then the PET bottle gets granulated into flakes. It gets hot washed. And the result of this sorting washing step is washed clear and light blue flake. Now, the question becomes, can we use this material for food grade applications? And the answer is no. It needs one more step. Washing clear light blue flake can be used for textiles, it can be used for sheets, it can be used for strappings, etc. And there's a big industry and a big market dedicated just for that. In fact, you have many recycling operations which stop at washed and clear light blue flake, and they export the flake for it to be further processed downstream. If you are interested in making food grade recycled PET, we need an additional step, which is a decontamination step. And here we're combining melting step and extruder. We are combining heat and a combination of time to make sure all the volatiles in the middle of the flake gets precipitated out. And here you finally have food grade recycled PET flake or pellet. Today, in most cases, it's around 90% pellet. There are still some food grade flake, but by and large, most of the food grade PET available in the market, recycled PET, is in fact in pellet form. And this pellet form comes in the shape of spheres, spherical pellets. Historically, when we talk about virgin pellets, they're often cylindrical or cubical with sharp edges. And recycled PET pellets are now spherical. So you should be aware of the differences. The spherical pellets can be used in your standard injection molded machines. However, it does come with additional challenges for melting compared to the virgin pellets. A little bit more difficult to melt this material. So care must be taken in the processing of this material and also in the configuration of equipment. And finally, using this resin, we're able to produce the preforms and finally gets blown and filled into the bottle. And here I'm describing the PET bottle to bottle circularity. Post-consumer bottle transformed into resin, then injected into preform, blown to the bottle, and so on and so forth. If you're sourcing good quality recycled PET pellet, it will often come with a specification sheet, which will indicate the recycled PET IV, the crystallinity, the acetaldehyde levels, et cetera, et cetera. So keep in mind that oftentimes you can get the specification sheet. Husky also has our own recommendations about these variables for recycled PET in the use of our equipment. Oftentimes, for the purpose of cost or for the mitigation of risk, we're often seeing bottlers and converters electing not to use 100% recycled PET. They want to mix the recycled PET in combination with the virgin PET. And we're seeing this between 25%, 30%, 50%, up to 100% mixtures. From a marketing point of view, or at least from a consumer point of view, we're hearing feedback that 100% recycled PET resonates most in terms of hitting sustainability targets. But from that cost point of view, from that process point of view, we're seeing that bottlers are electing to put lower amounts of rPET and slowly gradually grow up over time up to 100%. And we're often seeing that colorant is often introduced into the mix as well, because sometimes when you're using recycled PET, you get a yellowish color, you get a brownish color, and you want to mask that with, let's say, for example, a blue color. So we're often seeing that some colorant is added. Now, if this colorant is a liquid master batch color, you combine with the fact that you have a liquid lubricant inside your screw, an ejection screw, in combination with a spherical pellet, which is already difficult to melt, the combination of the two makes melting even more difficult. So even more care needs to be taken in setting up your injection molding process and also in scoping your equipment as well. Even virgin PET itself has a more complicated story behind it. It's not so simple. The building blocks of PET today are mostly made from non-renewable resources, but it is possible to make one or both of these these building blocks of PET from renewable resources. And we call this kind of bio-based PET. One example you might have seen in the market in the past, what we call plant bottle, where in that case, 30% of one of the two building blocks are made from renewable resources like corn or, for example, sugarcane, while the other was made from non-renewable. And today, we're seeing in the market both of those building blocks being able to be produced from renewable resources. At the end of the day, this PET is still like virgin PET. It's 100% PET. It's 100% recyclable. The only difference is that the building blocks used to produce it is bio-based instead of non-renewable resources. We are also seeing customers who are electing not to use PET. They're considering other types of materials to make the bottles. And probably the one that's most prevalent or discussed in the last couple of years was PLA. And PLA is not PET. It is a different type of plastic. It is a commercially biodegradable bioplastic. It is also sometimes called plant bottle. So let's not confuse between a plant bottle, which is, I would say, PET made from renewable resources, versus this type of material, which is not PET. It is also made from renewable resources like corn or sugarcane as well. So we're seeing customers electing to go with this option, and Husky is prepared to support customers doing so. The only point of caution is that this type of material is not considered recyclable in the PET recycling stream. It needs to be segregated and separated out, because in the PET recycling stream, it is considered as a contaminant, and it might destroy the feedstock of PET. So care needs to be taken to separate out these PET bottles and to manage them separately in the composition process, and not to be mixed with PET in the recycling stream. And as investment in recycling capacity continues to grow around the world and expanding the supply of recycled PET, we're seeing proliferation of recycled PET around the world in all consumer packaged good categories. And at the same time, while brand owners are moving towards recycled PET, they're taking this opportunity to incorporate other sustainability features into their packaging. So let us take a look at some examples. And here we start our story with bottled water. I think it makes sense to start here because this is the first soft drink category that incorporated recycled PET. We have another number of examples here of 100% recycled PET. Some of these bottles are labelless bottles, as you see, one is a two in the middle. The Suntory examples is using that carton clip example that I talked about before. The example from Nestle, it's not labelless, but they're using a label with less ink and less glue. And the example on the right from Ice River is also another interesting example, because here you have a brand owner who's bringing in-house end-to-end production from the sorting and washing step and recycling. So they're working together with the municipalities in the country to collect the PET packaging, bring it in-house. They're doing the sorting, washing internally. They're doing the decontamination internally, produce the pellets, make the preforms, blowing and filling all under one roof. And we're seeing more examples of this type of cooperation in countries around the world, with a number of CSD bottlers, sparkling beverage bottlers around the world, electing to bring their recycling operations in-house, or at least working together in a joint venture with a partner to manage the recycling of PET. And not long after bottled water, we're seeing examples of carbonated soft drinks moving towards recycled PET. At the beginning, there were some hesitations, some questions whether recycled PET can withstand the internal gas pressure, but those have been ameliorated. And today we're seeing many examples of recycled PET all over the world in every continent. And afterwards, we're seeing recycled PET even moving towards the juice and ready-to-drink tea space. We hear a number of examples of, let's say, ready-to-drink teas here. We have juices. We also have sports drinks, which are also using recycled PET. Most of these applications are septically filled, or they could be even fresh juices in some cases. And today, we have many examples using recycled PET. The last frontier is hot fill. So you have juices or ready-to-drink teas or sports drinks made with hot filling process. There are some examples out there using 100% recycled PET, or perhaps a small percentage. There is resin available, but it's not as common as, for example, the use of recycled PET in aseptic packaging. And even outside of the soft drink space, we're seeing examples of using recycled PET in even liquid dairy. I like this story here. This is one of my favorite stories. This is Friesland Campina here. A number of years ago, they were packaging their liquid dairy products, their yogurts, in H2P bottles, and they transitioned towards PET. And a number of years later, they transitioned from virgin PET to recycled PET. And to make the packaging even more sustainable, they included a number of other sustainable features there. They lightweighted their neck. Historically, most of these type of products were filled with 38 millimeter packaging necks, and here they're converting to 32 millimeter. Their label has no glue. It comes with a pre-serrated edge that breaks off easily during the recycling process to make sure that this label does not move into the recycling process and serve as a contaminant. So they took a lot of care, a lot of effort to try to design the most sustainable packaging that they can with 100% recycled PET. In the past couple of slides, I talked about how we're seeing proliferation of recycled PET around the world. PET applications, we talked about legislation mandates for recycled PET, brand owners making bold commitments. All of this is clearly driving up the demand for recycled PET. And until such time that supply is able to catch up, that we can expect that the cost of recycled PET will remain higher. And the question becomes, is there any way that bottlers can manage this higher cost? Is there any way they can offset the higher cost of recycled PET? And we're seeing many bottlers are turning towards lightweighting. They're looking to lightweight the packaging in multiple different ways, which we'll talk about in the next slide. And this is our next topic. Lightweighting also brings other benefits too. Remember, I mentioned before that a sustainability goal for many bottlers is to reduce raw material consumption, which by definition is what lightweighting is. So not only can you lightweight your bottle and reduce your raw material consumption, but at the same time, you can use those savings to sponsor the higher cost of recycled PET. So let us talk about some of the basics of lightweighting, sorry. So when we talk about lightweighting a PET bottle, there are three fundamental areas that you can lightweight. Number one, you can lightweight the dispensing, which is really the neck and the closure of the bottle. That's number one. Number two, you can lightweight the body of the bottle. And the last one, you can lightweight the base of the bottle. So this, for example, illustrated here is a 21-gram bottle, PET bottle for 500 ml, and you have a 2.2-gram HDB closure. This is an actual real-life example here. Lightweighting was conducted on the PET bottle for a total of 2.1 grams in PET savings and also 0.4 grams in closure savings when lightweight is applied both to the bottle and both to the closure. And it becomes manifestly clear the benefits of lightweighting. First of all, when we're talking about reducing raw material consumptions between the closure and the bottle, we're reducing about 1,000 metric tons. This resin savings translates into dollar savings around $1.3 million in savings, in cost savings, which can be used to sponsor the higher cost of recycled PET. And finally, the reduction in the raw material consumption translates directly into a reduction in the carbon footprint of your packaging. And we're talking about 2,000 metric tons of carbon footprint between the closure and PET. Becomes manifestly clear, lightweighting has many benefits in terms of sustainability. The big trend today is lightweighting in the dispensing. And here I'm talking about lightweighting the neck and lightweighting the closure. We're seeing a lot of activity. We're seeing a lot of conversion activity in the market in the last couple of years to lightweight the neck and the closure. And this is what we'll talk about next. In the space of bottled water, the big trend is moving to what we call 2522 neck. This is the smallest and the lightest bottled water neck in the market with a 1 gram neck and a 0.7, an astonishing 0.7 gram closure. We have slightly taller versions of this closure, which are slightly have a more of an improved opening experience, and they're also tethered versions of this closure as well. In the sparkling beverage or CSD space, the big trend is the conversion of 1881 or PCO 28 millimeter towards 2622 CSD. And finally, like I presented in the previous slides with Friesland Campina, the big trend in the juice and the ready-to-drink tea space and the sensitive category altogether is a movement from 32 millimeters, rather from 38 millimeters towards 32 millimeter. Among all of these trends, arguably the most important of these trends is the move from 1881 to 2622 CSD, in particular, the GME 3040 version of 2622 for sparkling beverages, which has really taken off this year. We're seeing a lot of investments being made and already committed, such that in the coming year or two, we're going to see in 40 markets around the world deployment of GME 3040 to replace 1881. And eventually, we expect that 1881 will be eclipsed by GME 3040 in all markets around the world. This is a really big trend. We start taking off this year. We expect it'll even accelerate even more next year in the year 2025. And as bottlers around the world are converting next, they're using this opportunity to also consider a tethered closure. And here I'm talking about the example, especially in the European Union, where they have the legislation for the tethered closure. So as they're converting to 2622 GME 3040, they're taking the opportunity to also launch a tethered closure. And this leads us to our next topic, which is the topic of closure innovation, supporting sustainability. And we begin by talking about tethered closures. So closure tethering is an opportunity to, number one, promote sustainability, sustainability messaging to your market centered around reducing the litter. We're especially seeing in a number of markets where marine litter is an issue. We're seeing a lot of brand owners instituting or including tethered closures because they know that's going to resonate with the consuming public. Is also an opportunity to offer something new, a new and premium package to the market. And we have this example on the left here where you have a bottler here advertising their tethered closures and promoting the sustainability aspect of it, but also the convenience aspect of it as well. And all of this can help build brand equity for the bottler. In fact, we're seeing, for all of these reasons, we're seeing that tethered closures are being introduced all over the world, not just in the European Union where it's being legislated, but even beyond. We're seeing examples in Malaysia, we're seeing examples in the Philippines, we're seeing examples in Thailand, we're going to see soon some examples in the Middle East, even in the Gulf countries, and discussions are taking place with many bottlers around in Africa. So I'm involved in a lot of discussions with customers in Africa, and a lot of them are seriously considering to deploy tethered closures because they understand the brand equity that can build for them and the positive message it brings. And finally, let's talk about our latest and perhaps arguably our most exciting innovation, which is the topic of the PET closure. And this opens up many possibilities, a package made from 100% PET end to end. With a PET closure, you can achieve the most recyclable package yet. You can recycle both the closure and the bottle in the same process and produce recycled PET as a result. This can potentially increase the yields of PET bales. So when the recycler gets the feedstock from whether it's curbside collection or whether they get it from informal selection or informal collection, when those bottles come back with the closure on with it, we're talking about increasing the bale yield by up to 10% if all those closures are PET instead of HDPE. And we also open up the door to using recycled PET in the closures. Today, it's not very easy to make food-grade HDPE closures. We can open the door to making food-grade recycled PET closures with the introduction of PET closures. More information about PET closures will be coming out soon, so I invite you to follow us at Husky to get more information. And finally, up until now, we talked a lot about PET packaging materials. We talked about PET packaging design, including labelless bottles. We talked about the rPET. We talked about lightweighting and tether closures and PET closures. However, it's really important to talk about the production process. To transform your idea into reality, you need to have the right technology. You need to have the right partner. And here I'm reminded about this fantastic quotation from Elon Musk, stating that manufacturing is insanely difficult. And when you're using rPET, it does become more difficult. And this is where Husky can come in to support you in achieving your sustainability goals. So let me first preface by explaining why recycled PET is more difficult to use on the preform side and also on the blowing side. When we talk about managing quality, principally we're talking about managing variability. And in the past, that meant managing variability associated with, number one, the equipment that you're using and the preform and the blowing. Talking about managing variability in the package design, managing variability in injection and blowing process. Now with recycled PET, we're adding a fourth degree of variability. And this is the variability associated with the material in itself. And this variability can manifest in multiple ways. We can talk about, you can have variability in color. You can have variability in the molecular IV, which can impact the bottle strength. We can have variability in the crystallinity of the material, which can impact the resin drying of the rPET pellets. And finally, we have variability in contamination of the recycled PET. And this contamination can come in the form of solid contamination, like metals or other hard objects, or can come in the form of volatiles produced from glues and inks and other types of maybe detergents, et cetera, et cetera. And all of these type of contamination can manifest as more dust in your injection molding process. It can manifest as black specks in your preforms and bottles, and it can also manifest as bottle bursting during blowing. And managing all this variability starts by having the best equipment to do the job. Here, allow me to introduce our Husky, our latest and greatest rPET-ready solution. And here, this solution comes equipped with the latest technologies from end to end to optimize the recycled PET at every step, starting from the resin preparation and drying, moving on to the melt delivery system, preform production itself, and during the molding operations. We include technologies there to mitigate some of the risk of recycled PET. We're adding closed loop quality monitoring of the preform, making sure we're taking a look at those defects closely associated with rPET. Those are being monitored. And finally, we have our team of rPET process experts and other services to help support you introducing rPET into your operations. And even stepping beyond the hardware, each Husky system today comes integrated with our latest Advantage Plus Elite program. And here, Advantage Plus Elite provides real-time monitoring of your system variables all day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And our team will proactively call you to resolve potential risks or issues together with your team. And this is especially critical. This service, Advantage Plus Elite, is especially critical in managing the variability associated with rPET. You can imagine you have that rPET coming in. It's going to cause fluctuations in resin drying. It's going to cause fluctuations in your melt delivery, and so on and so forth. All of those variables are being monitored by Advantage Plus Elite. If we find issues there, we will report them back to you and work together to solve those issues. So it becomes even more critical in managing recycled PET. And even stepping beyond the system now, Husky can even support you in the design and optimization of your facility, the monitoring of your factory, especially when we're talking about for running recycled PET. So we can optimize it, what equipment you need to run recycled PET in terms of your resin distribution. We can have including shot scope to monitor the variables across your entire factory. Husky can support you in all of these ways. And all of this comes together with our recently introduced Husky Complete, which provides complete end-to-end support for recycled PET, starting from package development, training, especially when we're talking about managing recycled PET, factory advisory services, what's the best layout for your factory, what equipment you need to manage recycled PET. And all of this is helpful to establish the baseline for success, and all the way up until Advantage Plus Elite to ensure that success that was defined during the baseline is maintained years afterward. This is the Husky Complete. And this concludes my presentation. So I'd like to thank you for joining me as we explored all the different facets of sustainable packaging. If you have any questions or you wish to learn more, please feel free to contact me or connect to the Husky using the QR code. And yes, thank you. Now I hand it back to you, Ben, for the question period.
Thank you, Phil. It was a wonderful presentation. I mean, I learned so much out of this presentation, I must say myself. And RPET is such an important topic for all of us. And we all are walking the talk in some way or the other, especially all the converters who are online now. I'm sure that it was very useful. And I see a lot of questions coming in, Phil, for you to answer. I think you should be prepared to answer, quite a lot of questions. Let's start off with the first one. Can the PET you're using to develop the PET closure be recycled in the same stream as bottles? Are there any additives in it?
To answer the question, yes, it is the intention that that the PET closures are, as I mentioned in my presentation, that it is intention that these PET closures can be reintroduced together with a bottle in the recycling stream. And normally, no. At this point, we're looking for in our design of the closures, we're looking for a design approach to achieve our to be able to build and make the PET closure perform in terms of managing the opening torque and managing the sealing. It's all built into the design and not with additives. If that answers the question.
Right, thank you. We have a question from Almarai Konain Shahidi. How does Husky approach the design of packaging that maximizes the use of recycled plastic without compromising performance or aesthetics?
So in terms of, so thank you for the question. When we're talking about maximizing use of recycled PET without compromising performance aesthetics, we're talking about in as most gentle way processing the rPET from the point that it is dried up to the point that the resin is the preform is produced, treating the rPET in the most gentlest way, setting up the right drying process, which is targeting the what rPET requires as opposed to what the virgin required, in terms of electing to use the right screw that will properly melt the recycled PET and properly mixing it together with colorant if used. So in every step of the way, and also includes in terms of the preform monitoring, making sure that we are closely monitoring the quality of the preforms and providing that feedback back to the machine to make sure that we're including the right process in the production of the preform. So every step of the way, like I mentioned, my position from adjusting the custom drying process in terms of adjusting the process and even in terms of the hardware of the injection system, in terms of mitigating dust in the molding of the preforms and the closed-loop monitoring. All of these type of equipment really helps to mitigate the risk of improving the quality of the preforms using recycled PET.
Right, right. Thank you, Phil. Phil, there's a question from Firat Alkan from Bridge Packaging. Are all the oil types removable during the decontamination process?
So in the decontamination, no, the answer is what I've seen in recycled PET. When they say oil types, I presume they're talking about volatile contamination. So when we talk about volatile contamination, we're talking about contamination produced from the inclusion of glues, of inks, and even sometimes the detergent itself in the recycling process can also act as a contaminant. So you're not going to be able to get rid of all the volatiles, but you'll be able to get rid of a significant proportion of it. Here, I would divert that question to the recycling equipment suppliers. From our side, we do include, there is, for example, an oil condenser that we do incorporate into our solution. And this oil condenser does help to remove an additional amount of volatiles. And we see evidence of that. It's connected to our hopper, and it helps to precipitate some of those volatiles out. But yeah, some of it eventually will go through, and but steps are taken to try to mitigate that risk.
Right, right. Okay, there's a question again from Almarai, Mr. Nadir Abdul Rahman. He's asking this question. in Saudi Arabia specifically, the challenge is that SDFA, they don't allow food to come in contact with recycled material during manufacturing. Keeping in view this, how is Husky approaching the Saudi market? It's a good question.
Very good question. So
Yeah.
I can only, for example, I share my example before. We're heavily present in the Saudi market, especially obviously in the virgin PET space. In terms of recycled PET, what we've seen in other markets, for example, we've seen some brand owners elect to use Husky multi-layer, where they put the recycled PET in a middle layer in non-food contact. In other jurisdictions, we've actually we obviously we support, but we were in some way participating, producing samples that were used to bring to the local FDA of those countries to help promote the use of recycled PET as food contact. But generally speaking, yes, we need to that big hurdle of having the approval, the state approval for food contact is a hindrance that needs to be overcome. So these samples need to be sent to the lab, for example, and they can simply take a look at many references around the world. I would, if a bottler is interested in trying to promote our PET packaging in Saudi, perhaps talk to the local SFDA and mention to them that we have references all around the world using recycled PET, and it would make sense for Saudi to join as well.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And there's quite a bit of activity happening within the packaging community to educate and to bring up to the standards and to also help, not just Saudi, also the Gulf market to understand the importance of recyclable solutions that we have, especially when it comes to food contact. Okay, moving on, Phil, we have this question. Is Husky equipped with any technology or testing to determine the percentage of recycled content used in the packaging? This is from Anil of Carrefour, Dubai.
Good question. It's not possible after the package has already been produced. So for example, if it's 100% or 50%, it can be very difficult, even on a molecular level, if you put on a microscope to determine exactly what percentage of recycled PET is being used. So I would say after the fact, after you injected the preform and blow into the bottle, it's not going to be very easy to delineate exactly 50%, 100%, 33%, or otherwise.
Okay, thank you. Well, there's a very interesting question here from Shivang Sharma from Integrated Plastics. He's asking, what is the outlook of a GCC versus European customer when they are told that the plastic bottle is made of recycled material versus a virgin grade material?
In this case,
yeah.
Are we talking about the consumer perception?
Yes,
I presume
exactly.
this is what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
So
This is
I think as of now, probably European consumers, there's a bigger focus. I would say sustainability plays a larger role in their buying decisions. I would say Europeans and maybe let's say Canada, United States, probably a greater percentage than many other jurisdictions around the world. But this being said, I could have confidently said that 5 years ago, but I was serving the Southeast Asia market, and I am surprised at the growth in that market in terms of consumers seriously considering sustainability in their buying decisions. It's become an important topic from an advocacy level, from a consumer level, and also from a legislative level. So I see the rest of the world coming on board on the topic of sustainability much faster than I would have originally anticipated 5 or 10 years ago. So whereas today I was expected that the GCC consumer probably would consider sustainability less in their packaging, in their buying decision compared to Europe, I wouldn't be surprised if that ramps up very quickly. I've seen other jurisdictions which completely surprised me. So it is a topic that has really accelerated in the past couple of years in terms of its importance and in terms of people need to future-proof their business. You don't want to be as a supplier to the market, if you're a bottler, if you're a converter, and once a decision is made, once consumers start making decisions, once legislation is already enacted, you don't want to be the bottler being behind. You want to be the bottler in front. You want to be the bottler setting the trend. You want to be the bottler which is leading the way. So we're seeing bottlers in Southeast Asia and other markets of the world. They saw the trend really going, and now they're being leaders. I'll just give you one example. There was this is a story that was told to us in Latin America. You have one converter who saw the trend, and in that time there was no legislative push. There was no other real push for sustainability in that market, but they saw it coming, and they set up the recycling operation. They start making the preforms, and now today, when the legislation is caught up, when the advocacy and the consumers are now start demanding it, they are right now they're in a pole position to supply preforms to the rest of the market, because now all the brand owners are really looking for this type of solution, and they're the ones who are really ahead compared to everybody else. So this could happen everywhere. It also means the GCC as well. So be ahead of the legislation, be ahead of consumer sentiment advocacy. It will grow everywhere around the world. Apologies for a long answer, but I think it's important for me to state that.
Yes, thank you. We have many questions coming in, Phil, but we're running out of time. So what we're going to do is we'll take just last one question for you to answer. We'll send you all the remaining questions, and we'll be in touch with the attendees and answer those questions. So this last question, how are you accountable for the 100% recycled? I don't know what he means, but anyway, is there some organization who can track this recycle? I mean, to make sure, I mean, what he means to say is like, how do we make sure that it's 100% recycled? Is there an organization to track this?
That's a good question. I know in some jurisdictions they actually have some certification. I believe RPET certification, but to be honest, I'm not really aware of. At one point we have to trust. We have the honor code, and we trust the brand owners when they advertise they have 100% recycled PET, that they're living up to their commitment. I know in some other jurisdictions, like I mentioned before, in Europe, I believe North America, I think there is some push there to make sure that if you're claiming this 100% recycled PET, but I think I need to follow up just to make sure, because I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to answer this question appropriately here.
Right, right. Phil, if you allow me, we can take one more question, please. It's a very interesting question just come in here now. How do we protect the leakage problem of PET closure to get monomaterial concept? Yeah.
Yeah, so this is our IP, right? This is what we worked many years to develop, and yes, that's always a challenge, right? PET is a hard material, it's rigid, and polyolefin, the HTP, is a softer material, right? Normally, when you talk about seals, you want a hard material combined with a soft material. But we came up with a very, very innovative solution to solve that problem. So we have a very good solution that addresses leakage, and I would say it even opens up the door in many other ways in terms of lightweighting, in terms of design, in terms of the neck and closure. Here, like I said before, I invite you to listen to Husky, follow Husky, and to learn more about it in the future. So yes, we have come up with a solution to properly address any leakage risks.
Right. Many questions are coming in, Phil, as we speak, but I'm going to send all these questions so you're going to answer. This is a very interesting webinar that we have had. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for all your questions. Thank you for your participation in this important webinar. We feel there is definitely a need for growth when it comes to RPET, and we are seeing that previously we were just talking about this, and now we can see both brand owners and converters walking the talk. They are implementing this closed loop for bottled water recycling and also CST, as we heard from Phil. A lot of wonderful technical things, and you'll be getting this webinar also as recorded one. If you want to again listen to it and learn from it, feel free to contact Phil and Husky. You can see the QR code over there and the email, so you can definitely be in touch with them. You can be in touch with us as well, so that we can come out with more and more activity within this rigid plastic space, which is moving from a linear to a circular economy. And it was happening in the non-food grade sector, but now we're seeing this happening in the food grade as well, which is wonderful. So anyway, thank you very much, everybody, for joining. And we look forward to seeing you very soon for the next webinar, for the next events that Packaging MEA is doing. One important event that I would like to announce is on the 20th of February 2025, we'll be having Prime Awards for the packaging industry. So you'll be getting more information on that later. Till then, and till we meet again with another wonderful webinar from Husky, goodbye for everybody. Thank you, Phil, once again for your wonderful presentation, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks.